All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Too Many Adults in the Room podcast. I am here with some awesome students, and I am your facilitator, Trent Day Hall. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go around and introduce everyone that is in the room, all the amazing students, and then after that, we will dive into our conversation. So students, you all know the drill. You're allowed to say whatever you'd like to say. The most important piece is we want to know what school you're from and your grade. All right. So whoever wants to start can go ahead and start.
My name is Camille, and I'm a junior at Long Beach. My name is Martha. I'm a sophomore at Headley. My name is Riley. I'm in 11th grade at Reservoir.
My name's Ara. I'm a senior at Glenelg.
My name's Shrieker. I'm a freshman at Urban Hill.
My name's Jordan. I'm a junior at Howard.
My name is Mariana. I'm in 9th grade and I do Reservoir.
Gotcha. All right. So just so we can make sure everyone can hear everybody, don't be afraid to lean into the mic. So today we are here to talk about something specific. Today our topic is the lost art of communication. And our students have spent the last 2 times we've been together having conversations around this subject. And this is the topic that we came to. So there are a couple of things that the students want to talk about that are within the realm of causes of the lost art of communication, the effects of the lost arts of communication, as well as some of the solutions for reestablishing the lines of communication. So we're going to start our conversation off, and I'm just going to kick a question out, but you all know the drill. You're allowed to go in any direction that you want. My job is simply to help you all critically think about things you're already thinking about. So the first question I'm going to start us off with is around the causes of the lost art of communication. So take your time, think about this for yourself. Where has communication broken down for you in relationships and connections? And what do you perceive as the reasons why? Whenever anyone is ready, you can just go ahead and hop in.
I can't personally think of an example of when communication has really failed, but I can think of some reasons why. I'm thinking because people don't truly listen, and
Can I pause really quick? I want you to more focus on yourself. So use like an I statement that'll help you out. When is communication, or what are reasons why communication breaks down for you?
Well, I don't always listen, and I've realized that. And after coming to Youth and Conversation and having these dialogues, I realized that most of the conversations I have, I'm waiting for my turn to talk and not really truly listening. And if I don't really have an interest in what's being said, I will hear it but not really listen to it. So I feel like that could be the cause personally for me of why communication is sometimes lost.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Going first.
I find that I'm really similar to Camille in that always wanting to be right is one of my traits, which is not always the most positive. And I find that when I think I'm right in a situation, I will wait for the person to finish talking and not really be listening to what they're saying, but I'm waiting to refute what they have to say.
So listening to respond as opposed to understand?
Yes.
Gotcha. I see some head nods. Other people agree with that?
I did too. I didn't always want to offended about it, but I with my one friend, you like a bit all the time. There's no malice behind it, but we'll like to talk about certain things, and like, he has certain views, and I have certain things. Like, we'll go back and forth, and like, I'm like, it's not that I'm very easily like influenced, so like even though like I'm sorry friends if you listen to this, even though if I think about it later and like his argument didn't make a lot of sense when I think about it. It didn't matter in the moment because I was in the mindset of okay, I'm talking about this thing, and like because I can be influenced easily, swayed, I'll be like, oh, this is right, and like, that was derail me a little bit.
You said like 3 specific things that were really interesting. Like in the beginning, you started saying that it's usually because there's a difference of opinions and there's no real malice, but we're trying to get our points across.
Yeah.
So we're not listening to each other because we're literally trying to be heard. I also heard you say that the difference in opinions itself, there are times where you're trying to push against it, which is you not necessarily listening to the opinion, or you're just accepting it because it seems like the person might know what they're talking about, which is also not really listening to it.
Yeah. Well, it's not how it works. Well, like, usually when my best friends when I listen to like, a toddler. I'm like, well, I'm like, I want to have bad communication. It's just that it's interesting to like analyze how we communicate in those debates.
Ah, got you. So it's not necessarily a lost art of communication, but you're recognizing that communication when you're in those spaces of debate isn't necessarily as genuine as it could be.
I suppose. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know.
We'll come back to that just
Yeah.
in case. Think about it a little bit more. Let me see if I can like perceive it a little bit better. All right. What about for some other people? All right, you keep smiling. I feel like you're dying to say something. Nothing on your brain?
When you talked about perceiving, it made me think that that could also be a reason because sometimes how sometimes I perceive something may be different, even if our points could be the same. How someone brought the point across, like maybe their tone or something, or how I bring the point across. However people perceive it or how I receive it could be negative or positive. So that connotation of the words that you're saying or what you're trying to explain could also add to how communication can get lost.
And I think the undertone of underneath of what you're saying is all those little pieces that contribute to the way that we perceive things. People aren't really aware of them.
Yeah.
Like we don't have an awareness that our tone controls the way that someone might perceive something we're saying, stuff like
And
that.
like in body language, because I do that a lot. Because I always sit with my hands crossed, but it's just comfortable. But it looks like I'm closed off and I don't care. But I really could be interested in what you're talking about. But this is just comfortable for me to put
Beginning
at least
is not where you have to enter the conversation if there's something else that you want to speak to. That's all.
Well, a relationship I have with communication failure is with my dad. What was the book that you made us read or not made it, but when
The Four Agreements.
No, the other one.
Anatomy of Peace.
Yeah, that one, and how you go into certain conversations and you assume that it's gonna go a certain way, but the whole time we read that book, that's my relationship with my dad. We both, I know, I think I know that I'm gonna be annoyed with whatever he says, and he thinks he knows that he's gonna be annoyed with whatever I say. So whenever we talk, it just starts like that. It starts whatever way we think it's gonna start, and so we don't have a way to openly come into a conversation and actually hear each other because it never works like that for us.
So was the foundation set in that space that you were describing? So like you're irritated or you're like thinking you're going to be irritated because that's been
Yes.
the experience before?
Yeah.
So what I want to talk about is the language gap and like how like so we are all from the United States and like we all speak English as our native languages, but in a lot of places in the world, including some parts of the U.S., English is not natively spoken, and yet we have to accommodate people accommodate to speaking English. And like yes, I understand there was an argument that like, well, you live in this country where English is spoken the most, so out of respect for the country, you should learn English. It says, I will learn Spanish, I will learn Spain or Mexico or whatever. But I feel like also like this is the United States is a very proud country, proud of the heritage, proud of the history, proud of the language. And I feel like I don't know, like it's interesting like diving into like the language of everyone, like just see like what like a discussion could like find about it, like our thoughts, our like solutions, problems, causes, the whole package. Yeah.
I heard you speaking to like almost like rigid traditions in America that are like kind of like the causes of why we don't communicate that often. or why communication is like a lost form, doesn't happen as well as it could happen. I am curious for some of you that have not spoken yet, like, what are you picking up so far, or like what's on your mind currently?
I feel like sometimes when I'm talking with people, I don't really take the time to like understand where they're coming from or why they feel that way. I'm just trying to get my point across.
Like, so whenever I like turn on the TV and like see politics, like I notice that politicians, they know like how people will like react to what they say. So they say it in a certain tone. Like I know Ben Shapiro, the man just like uses this tone which is like very nasally. So he wants to get at his opponent by like making them like kind of angry. It's like this little like annoying little man is telling you what to do. So he breaks down and then like it makes him look really bad in front of the audience and it gives him so they use communication to their advantage so they know how to like structure their points in like a way that really hits at their audience. So yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about like Socratic inquiry, like essentially like using different philosophy tactics to trick someone into saying something that they don't want to say, and then it makes you look better than you look.
Yeah.
And that, I think, goes to that concept that I can't remember. You mentioned it, I believe. You were talking about winning. Like, it's important to win. So I think it goes hand in hand with that concept of it's important for us to win. Therefore, some people use syntax and sentence structure to actually win over people and not technically communicate with them.
I think that also goes in with pride when coming into conversations. So the examples that you guys just brought up, like always wanting to win, and when Jordan was saying about how we build a pride and how like, oh, we should speak our language, all this stuff. I feel like everyone has their own sense of pride that they don't want to let go. So when they're in a communication or in a state of like when you're losing, that's when you start to like, you're not listening to what the other person's saying. You're going to just keep screaming your points, even if they sound wrong. Because sometimes like I do that, because sometimes I realize when I'm wrong. And I'm like, oh.
Like mid
yeah,
communication?
But I'm still talking. I'm like, yeah. This is why this, and this. But I realize that I'm wrong, but my sense of pride won't let that happen. I can't have other people, see me as losing an argument. So, you have to shift gears.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I'm wondering if I would love for people to attach some personal stories to what we're talking about. Because I think that, and I like admit that, like, I feel like you kind of opened the powder keg a little bit because you went right into like a genuine exchange that you had that you can recall. And I think if we talk about specific moments that we can recall, we'll be able to mine out some more information of how we actually arrived there and then get to like some of the effects and then some solutions. Yes, of course.
Well, a specific moment was basically, so I had the communication like problems with my dad, and so then this therapist said that we should bring my dad in with me to talk, and we would like get it all sorted out and leave all happy. But then we did it, and it was awful because he did not listen to a word I said. I know he didn't because he yelled at me the whole time we were there, and then I cried in like 5 minutes, and then I just cried for the rest of the hour, and then my therapist asked him to leave, and she was like, I'm so sorry I made you do that. And I was like, yep. So that was a personal experience for me.
It feels like it sounded like that experience could be defeating.
Yeah, it really was because sometimes, because my dad used to be worse, and now he's slightly better. So it's like the feeling like maybe we could get along better in the future, but then like stuff like that happens, and then that was really defeating because then you'd be like, there's no way if you can't even talk with a mediator there, like how would I talk to him at home by ourselves? Like it doesn't feel like that would work.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like that's not necessarily something easy to share. Appreciate that.
I want to talk more about like winning and losing arguments. Like I've been having this like ongoing debate with my friend like all year about like various things, and we've both become like very entrenched in our positions, and like even more so, and we're loud, so it's like somewhat performative too, because like they're like sometimes people just watch us argue like when we're in the hallway or something, and I definitely understand about like not really listening to what the other person's saying and not trying to like come to like I guess a middle ground or like some solution
Like
to
consensus almost.
yeah, but I also think that, like the nature of our argument there is no solution and we mostly do it for fun, so it's not like a it's not like a high stakes like thing where we're like because we're still friends, but I definitely like understand how we're probably not communicating in like the best way.
Even like hearing you say that, it's almost like you were touching on the difference between an argument and discourse. Because like discourse it sounds like is where you and your friend really want to be at, but you're in a different space because of just like where you're at, literally.
Yeah.
So piggybacking off of that with a specific example. So last summer, 2010, I was having my friend on the bus for like an hour since we're on our way home. We were talking about all of our literally one subject, and like here, and I don't know if I want to like say, so about LGBTQ rights, not rights, but like opinions on it. You have one view on it, I have another view on it. So we were duking it out. I don't know anyway, aggressive him, but like we just discoursing, and like at the end of it, he kind of had this triumphant moment, like, but like, I'm like one of my point intimate, I'm like, we're on like drinking, and like, and like, I mean, question like my beliefs about that, and like, but the worst part is like he's such a nice guy. So like when he was like he was texting me like we all had a great talk and like a smiley face. I was like, why are you so nice? I'm like, but 5 minutes ago you was doing this haha I win almost like, but that made me so frustrated. Like, why? Like, can I rubbing it in a way, not having it, but by being nice, it's kind of like you didn't realize how much it like messes my head. So kind of like, I didn't defeat him per se, but it made me like, not obsessed, but like,
I feel like it primed you.
kind of,
Yeah. Like your friend and you were having like dialogue and debate, like going back and forth. One specific time in that debate, he made a point that kind of hit a little harder. And then instead of kind of like circling back around, it seemed like he like relished the victory, and then you didn't have a chance to necessarily.
Yeah. So like we talking like we're both like religion. We have the same religion, and we use that as an argument. And so and like I'm like he points like statistics and all that, and like basically the whole thing like at the end of it I thought about everything he said afterward, and like, well, maybe he's right. And like, but I don't want him to be right because I want him to be right. So yeah, like, I said something I like vividly remember, and like, even like, from time to time, I might like think about it, and like, yeah.
So you're like, I don't know how this fits in, but I heard you talking about processing that specific moment after the fact.
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily you were paying attention or like listening fully to him in that moment, but in hindsight, as you were like processing the things he was saying, some of his points were coming through, and you were hearing his points after he was talking.
Kind of. It was like, I was listening as he was talking, but like, I was relishing in the argument, and like, that's what like, made me, like, that's what like primed me, and like, made me like doubt myself in that.
Got you. So that leads me to like the thought process of like reasons why like the self-doubt can come from potentially communicating with someone who has a divergent opinion from you. And then if it rattles your thought process or your opinion, it can feel kind of nerve-wracking. And that would maybe prime you to not necessarily want to communicate with that person in the same way next time.
No, we still debate all the time, but it was like something that like really, that we debated before, we debated after that, but for some reason that specific debate really like hit home, like really like messaged me kind of.
Got you.
When you talked about the self-doubt, it made me think of, like, an example for me is just talking about my feelings. I don't have a problem with talking about my feelings, but sometimes when I'm talking to certain people that might not understand, like, I wish people could be in my head when I'm, like, sometimes when I get irritated, nothing really is really bothering me until you ask me what is wrong, or like you look mad. It just makes me more mad, and I wish people could understand that. But also, when I stress out about like little things, but I wish I could have people who could relate to that, like my parents. Like when I try to tell them, they just tell me like it's not as like that's not that bad. Just to try to think of it differently and not focus on like minuscule things. But it's easier said than done. So I wish someone could actually feel what I'm feeling, so then they could like do it. I know other people are trying to, but it's just not the same if you can't relate to it and actually feel what I'm feeling. So I wish, and then it makes me like self-doubt and like not want to talk about it anymore, because I was like, they're never gonna understand.
Building what you're speaking to is empathy. Like you're wishing people had empathy, but it's like for quote unquote trivial things, like things that might bother you. That
have it though, not because I can be empathetic and like not, you could not relate to something and actually live it, but you can still be empathetic.
Mhm.
I want that, but at the same time, I want you to exactly know what I'm feeling like.
Shared experience.
Yeah.
Got you. So would you say like in those moments where you're feeling that way, you feel like you don't necessarily have the language to articulate your feelings because there isn't someone that you can communicate with that shared experience? It makes it hard for you to communicate it to anyone else, which essentially like breaks that line down of communication.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to touch more or talk more about the what Jordan was talking about with the having your thought process like changed or like shaken and what you thought about something, and then someone like presents you with something else, and then like I feel like a lot of people don't see that as a good thing and don't like feel good about themselves when they have something that they thought was changed, and they think they might think less of others, or like societally we think less of others that like change their position on something, and I think that like embracing that is like something that we should focus on or work towards, is embracing like when our like opinion on something has changed, or even just like question where we didn't think about it in one way. When we start thinking about something in a different way. And that could also be like what you were talking about too, like with the shared experiences. Like even if you can't like express something, even if you can't communicate something with someone who's like has your exact same experience, you can like maybe explain the experience to that person, and so that they can help like in the best way they can. That makes sense.
I like how your shirt has changed your perspective. That was perfect for this.
Awesome.
I was like looking at your shirt. I was listening to what you were saying, but I was also looking at your shirt. I was like, that is a perfect shirt for this.
And you were like speaking to ownership of mistakes. almost like, and just having a realistic understanding that at some point every person is going to be wrong.
And it's like good to be wrong.
Yeah, because you're learning new things.
Right. Yeah.
So even knowing that, I know that we mentioned it earlier a couple of times that it doesn't feel good to be wrong, though. Even though.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, who?
Absolutely.
Who wants to be wrong?
So how do you all reconcile that then? If you know logically that being able to own your mistakes, being able to be vulnerable around your mistakes is a way to grow as a person and to connect with others, but simultaneously you have this feeling within you of not wanting to be wrong. How do you personally reconcile that?
If I'm wrong, I just like try to change the subject.
Yo, thanks for being honest. Appreciate that.
I'll start getting quiet.
But then that's like a telltale sign that you're into it. So then he gets like he's like super happy. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like you brought up the word defeated, and like that, I don't think that word should, like, winning and losing should just be removed from
Dialogue.
Yeah, the dialogue and winning and losing should not have anything to do with each other. They're like, if both people come away like learning something new, that's the important thing. Or even if one person learns something new.
So where do we develop this sense that there has to be a winner or a loser in conversations or when we're talking about divergent opinions?
TV,
I would say society.
Yeah, like
So for you all personally, like you feel like you get it from TV, you feel like society kind of gives you this look.
yeah, and like when you're talking, especially like when there's other people around, other people will like maybe like pay attention, and then they will to like indicate that they agree with somebody, and then that'll make them like that like feels good to have other people that are not necessarily part of the conversation to agree with you when you're like arguing with another person, and then that can make you like feel like winning, and then it feels like a competition. Yeah, it just like it feels like a competition, so then we equate it to being a competition.
They're like, oh yeah. Come over. They'll grab random people. It's like, this is a conversation between me and you. There's no need to pull other people in.
Well, actually, I think it's a good thing that they pull other people, because like that's a good way to like connect with people. And so like you just spread your ideas around, and then soon you have like an army of like you.
So there's like pros and cons to having like outside observers for whatever communication is happening. But then it also, we're recognizing that it impacts that communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like if you have another person, then like he can like judge like what. So like if you look at like debates on TV, like they're like basically judged by the audience, right? Because like the audience eventually like just says who's right or wrong. Because like you always have this thought that you're right, and he always has this thought that they're right, and so there's no like definitive winner. But if you have like a third party who's unbiased and they listen to everything, and then they can make conclusions, and then they like choose the winning party. So like,
I think that's like a good point, and I think that like what I got from that is that we should make more clear boundaries between discourse and debate, because like I see the value of debating of two people who are like completely entrenched in their position and just trying to convince the audience one way or the other, or like anybody in the audience one way or the other. But then I feel like a lot of the time that mentality and like seeing that on TV, because that's like what we're mostly exposed to when we see people discussing, it's mostly in debates. So we bring that mentality and just that, like what we see, we like emulate when we're just trying to talk to somebody.
I think that's a good point. When you ask like why we kind of associate having conversation with people to winning and losing, I think we sort of have like a line that's sort of being erased every little bit as we argue with people between having a conversation and debating with someone about a topic that you're passionate about. Because when you're having a conversation, that means essentially you are open to hearing what someone else has to say and accepting, or not even accepting, but hearing it and understanding where they might be coming from, and knowing that even though you may not agree, that's another way to view the topic. But a debate is there is a clear winner and there's a clear loser on whose point got across the best. And I think because we see it so much on like the political stage and just like on social media, and people always having such a position that they are constantly looking to convey the sense that they win or lose. I think that that's taking away from the idea that we can just have a conversation with someone to learn something new or just to hear the position of someone else.
I feel like you just outlined perfectly what our country has been going through since our last election. That this polarizing dynamic that's happening, where people will start off in this place of dialogue and end up in debate where there has to be a clear winner, and neither side is really listening to one another. I feel like that was a clear articulation of that. So there's a couple of things I want to do. I still want to have this space open for us to talk about causes, because I definitely don't think we talked about all the different causes that you all might encounter in terms of hiccups in your communication. But I really do want to move or shift to some effects, because we've kind of been speaking to them a little bit. The word defeated has come up a lot in terms of like the effect that it might have on you when you feel like you aren't really communicating the way that you should. But I also want to talk about some others, both from your personal standpoint and the fact that we're recognizing communication is a lost art. What effect does that have on our society? What effect do you notice it has on our society?
Yeah, so some of the effects that I see from like what we were just talking about is that when you have the mentality of like debate and like winning and losing, if you win, you'll carry like that mindset into normal discussions, and that'll like break down an actual conversation with someone and harm like interpersonal relationships. Like I definitely like come from a place of experience with that. I even when I'm talking about like a relationship with someone, like to the other person, I often am in the mindset of I'm right about like these specific facts about like something that happened in the past, and this is why I'm right about this thing that like it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong on, but I'm just like in the mindset of trying to like prove to them why their feelings are wrong, which that's not a good thing to do. And then on the flip side of that is also, so that's like if you're winning, if you win a debate, then you carry that. But if you lose a debate, that means that you don't want to like, or I feel like that translates to not wanting to have discussions with people because you didn't like losing, quote unquote, the debate. So then you don't want to lose a discussion with someone about like an interpersonal relationship, and then that can also break down conversation.
Also, like, I don't know if please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like when you started talking about feelings, I can only think about if you're having a debate that is based in the realm of feelings and you lose, it essentially is like an attack on your identity, or it might feel like an attack on your identity.
Right, yeah, that's crushing. Like, my friend didn't talk to me for like 4 months.
4 months? That's terrible.
Like, we had like a big fight over the summer for like a lot of reasons, and I definitely didn't handle that well. I definitely like attacked it like a debate, and I was trying to explain why his feelings were wrong, and he didn't like that so much. So,
thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
I feel like that was really a detailed account of like how we can fall into that, and it seemed like that was unintentional. Like you didn't go into that space with the intention of making your friend feel that way.
Yeah,
but you were heightened and he was heightened.
Like, hurt him, like, so. But it's the same mindset. Because like I like to debate people in school or whatever just for fun, like all the time. So I carry that mentality and that way of talking just to almost everything. And I'm realizing here that that's really not good.
So that's might like have nothing to do with what we're talking about. And this is like very extreme. Like our English teacher made us read this book. It's called Fahrenheit 451. It was like, so basically what happened is like, so society is basically like not talking to each other because they're all like glued to their TV screens, right? And I think that's an effect of like the lost art of communication. Because like, I mean, it's like really extreme and it never happened, but it's just a possibility that Bradbury put out there. So it's just like, because people are too like infused into like entertainment and just getting like high on like happiness, I guess, and so that they don't care about the people around them, so they don't really feel the need to talk. But then they realize that that's what they're missing from their life. So you should have communication to like have like true happiness.
you're speaking about like technology and our ability to communicate through that or lack thereof, and then what's lost, which it seems like intimacy is lost through technology. So there's something missing in that art of communication through technology that isn't had in the same way when you're speaking face to face to someone, or even maybe on the phone.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought something I don't know if I should have like go on it, but like, okay, so we can look at this if we need to, but like, I know like, this sexual pornography and like, on relationships, like, and like, if you see something that you like, and and like you want that, and your partner, and partners, cannot provide that, or they don't know about it, you will go to that source, pornography, for a way to get that high, like you were talking about, and I can enjoy relationships with intimacy, and like, and this is not to say, that pornography is bad in and of itself, it's entertainment like anything else, and to me, what's good is learning about, like sex, which is, I mean, yeah, it's taboo, but everyone, it's how we all got here. So if you didn't know.
I'm gonna pause you real quick because I think I want to like grab what you're talking about, because I think what you're talking about is connected to the idea of like happiness, finding happiness in other things. So essentially, you're talking about this instant form of gratification of intimacy that isn't real intimacy. So like there are things that are set up for us to essentially not have to have real connections with people because we have the fast food versions of it.
Also, to talk about intimacy, I was also thinking about that when you were talking about the people's mentalities of always winning. I feel like that mentality kind of, like, I guess like dismantles like intimacy, because in a way you're not trying to care about people's feelings. You're really just trying to like get to your point, but it's not like people are doing it like unintentionally. They're not. Well, some people are being purposely being mean, but most people, like including myself, like if I do come off mean, I'm not trying to. It just seems like, I guess like your survivor mode. Like if you know that you're like, oh, I'm gonna be winning or I'm losing right now, so I need to do this. I think people like forget about the intimacy, but also with like this winning, and it's been like ingrained in us. I think that's just gonna slowly push people away from not really having conversations and then just turning to their phones and then doing other stuff and like using technology because they don't want to lose a conversation or something like that. So then they stray away from that. Like online, you can put up a front, so even if you are losing, it's okay. No one sees your face. No one really knows your feelings. But in person, when you get that, it is somewhat defeating, and I feel like people will slowly start to not want to talk to that person or slowly not to want to talk to anyone at all.
This might be an oversimplification, but I feel like I just found like the bumper sticker of everything that we've been saying in terms of causes, and it's people are just scared to not be affirmed on who they are. And so everything that we've said has been some connecting piece of someone wanting to be affirmed on either a thought process, a relationship, an argument. And on both sides, because there's a fear of not being affirmed, that bubble of like, or that hiccup of communication starts to happen. About being told they're beautiful, just simply that. Do you want to speak more to it?
So basically, I watched a video about this girl. She was telling people that she was taking pictures of things that are beautiful, but behind the camera would be like a person, and most of them smiled and they're like, "Oh, that's so sweet." Like, no, not me. And then there was one person who got like really mad. She's like, "How could you say that? Is this a joke or something?" And some people like do have like they felt some type of way, but she was just trying to call everyone like beautiful and just like let people know. And how people perceived it could be like one way or another. So if you're not always affirmed, maybe you would come off like saying, "Oh, this must be a joke," because you're not used to that. And like in my group, we were talking about that video and we had a discussion. And this one girl said, "Well, if someone told me that, I would kind of look at them weird, like, what, like, why are you saying that?" Because now, like, I give random compliments, and some people appreciate them. Some people just look like, huh? So I guess it's not really normal. So what's not normal? People think that it's like a bad thing, that it's different, like to just randomly compliment someone, tell someone that they're beautiful and they don't always hear it. So people are used to like not always hearing it, and they're not always being like affirmed. So then they think the worst and they think negatively and they shut themselves out, and then they like just react as opposed to like actually taking into the converse, like taking into what the person really said.
There are definitely ways I think that all of us are primed not to accept genuine forms of connection or communication based on things that we went through in our life. And maybe they're specific to different relationships that we have. Like Minna was communicating like a specific relationship where it's hard for her to like have that communication. That doesn't mean as a baseline, it's hard for her to communicate with everyone. And like there are spots probably in our lives where we find it more difficult to communicate with others than in other spaces or even people. Because we are getting close to the end of our time, I do want to shift more in the space of like leave the space of causes and shift more to the spaces of effects and solutions. So I really want to hear from you again, man. I'm curious if you've thought about solutions, especially to something so personal to yourself.
Well, I was just thinking, like, the effects. This happens a lot in school. Like, it happened with the redistricting. I sit with 5 or 6 guys at lunch because I don't have any girlfriends in my lunch, and they all just, it's a pack mentality. They will agree with whatever the other guys say. They're talking about redistricting, and I was like, I am in favor of redistricting, and all of a sudden it was on me. I was like, oh my god. And so, and then like in class it also happens, like I'll be right about something and a guy will disagree with me, but other guys will just agree with the guy, and it's only until like it has to be a guy, because guys don't listen to girls, especially not in my classes. It'll have to be a guy that agrees with me, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, Minna, you're right." I'm like, "Yeah, I know," but it leads to self-doubt because it's like, yeah, because you don't want to talk again, because even if you are right, like you don't want to put yourself in the position to be. It's not even like what I don't think it's really like a winning or losing thing. It's just like everyone's against you kind of feeling. So but I think a way to fix it would be like you have to it has to come from you, I think, because that's what the whole problem is with the winning and losing thing. You feel the need for the external validation of people saying like, "Oh, I agree with you. Oh, you're right. Like you win this one or whatever." And that's what you keep going. Like that's the feeling. It's the validation that you get, and if you have that within yourself to be like, I don't agree with you, and I think I'm not. It's not even like I don't. It's not like I think I'm only right. It's like you understand what they're saying too, but you're not gonna feel bad when you express what you're feeling or what you want to say. So I think that's a self thing.
No, that was perfect. The solution I heard, and I'm probably going to take this for myself, is wow, I don't know what I just wrote. Like literally my handwriting is trash. Not like seeking validation outside of yourself.
Yeah, external validation is killer.
I guess like have the confidence to like take those risks, knowing that you might have someone who disagrees with you, or you might have someone who might like really want to shut your opinion down, but to not let others or like external factors deter you from like what your point's trying to say. Even if like you like realize that your point is starting to change, but don't like shut yourself down or like try to say that, oh dang, I must be wrong, so I don't want to speak up any other time.
To kind of piggyback off that, you can't expect to grow as a person and as a communicator unless you're willing to put yourself in those positions. So unless you're willing to accept that you might not always be right or be in a position where you don't know all the facts of the matter and you're able to say, okay, I'm wrong and this person is right, I'm going to hear what they have to say and understand their perspective, I feel like you can't truly grow as like an effective communicator unless you experience that and put yourself in the position to experience that.
One thing I want to add though is, what about people who don't have a lot of confidence and don't know how to like summon confidence? Like that's like pretty hard for a lot of people, or like already insecure about what they're saying, or like about whatever, and they don't want to put themselves out there, and they don't feel like they can. They don't feel like they can put themselves out there, and it's like it's kind of hard to just tell them to be more confident. It's like, because I feel like we don't accept that for like a lot of other things, like be richer or something like that. Like, so just to tell someone that like you need to improve yourself, like that's true, but also I think that there needs to be like some way that like we can help people that aren't necessarily speaking up as much as they could.
Almost like scaffolding.
Yeah.
Like, here's some actual tangible things you can do that can help build your confidence when speaking to others.
Right. And like have other people like support them, because like a lot of people can't, or like I don't know if they can or can't, but it's a lot harder for people to do things completely alone, and without having either like a concrete path, like you were saying, or other people to support them. And I don't see that support for this almost anybody.
Other solutions?
Well, honestly, like, really, let's start. It's like hard. It's like seek out people who will be with you, and like who you know will be with you. So like when you like say something, they'll be like feel something like saying. So like you can go out and like have a conversation, knowing like someone is listening to you, and like they're not like alone in their opinion.
That almost sounded like it was a direct something we could tell someone that maybe is an introvert or has not as high confidence, but finding someone or speaking to people that have very similar opinions to you, like practicing saying your point of view with someone who isn't necessarily who doesn't have like the opposite opinion or divergent opinion, might be a good way of like building up confidence to say what you truly believe. Like that, Jordan? All right. So I don't want to, but we're getting close to the end, so we should do a checkout because of the amount of people that we have here. And I want to make sure that the adults in the room get a chance to talk about what they perceived from the conversation, and also if any advice that they might want to speak to in terms of the lost art of communication. So we're just going to go around the room, and this is your soapbox moment. So we're not going to disrupt each other or anything like that. This is literally your moment to say whatever it is that's on your mind that you might not have gotten a chance to say during the conversation, or if you want to speak to something maybe someone talked about during the conversation. This would be the moment to put that into the space. All right, and whoever wants to start can start, and then we're just going to go counterclockwise from that person.
Okay, I would say that I learned that it takes confidence, but also the strength part to know that, to accept when you are wrong and stuff like, and somewhat defeat, but also it takes confidence to have self-confidence and to not think that you are going to lose automatically, and it takes, going back to strength, it takes strength to not be in that mentality, oh, I have to win, I have to lose. So those two things are very important, and I think it takes practice and time to build that and to be more aware about it. But I think just this conversation made me more aware of what I do personally, and I've noticed like maybe like what other people do that I've just like observed, so that I can maybe help myself or help others to like realize what they're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, I learned like when you're going to a conversation, you should really go into understand and not really win or lose and stuff. And it's okay to, be wrong sometimes.
I think what I learned from this was less conceptual stuff, but more from my own personal experience with this topic, and just that knowing that not everyone has a lot of confidence, like you said, and knowing that you're going to have to be wrong sometimes in order to grow and to listen rather than just hear what someone has to say, ready to argue or repeat what they have to say. I think I'm going to just make more of an effort to, no matter who I'm talking to or what the context of the conversation is, understand what they're saying and understand their perspective before I try and jump back into the conversation and really take in what they're saying before I even, formulate my own opinion and try and jump back at them with it.
I was gonna say more like probably the best way to be able to communicate with people is you have to push yourself. Like there's never really gonna be a conversation that you have when people are telling you that you're wrong that you want to hear. Like you most likely are never gonna want to hear that. But like in a job, like if you don't take criticism, you're not gonna move like up. Like you have to be able to push yourself, and I know that's hard because I used to be like super introverted, and I wouldn't probably even be doing this, but like like you can't really. It comes to a point where you just like don't want to be like that, or not like that, but you don't want to. You are in such a mental space where it's just so hard not to be able to tell people what you're thinking and stuff. So you have to push yourself to get out of that. And like, yeah, you can get help from other people, but it mostly just has to come from yourself.
I definitely learned, like when you were talking about listening to other people, I definitely caught myself thinking more about what I was going to, like just right now, thinking more about what I was going to say next, and not as much on what the other person was saying specifically. And I guess I hadn't really thought about that before, and that's definitely something I've learned and like need to work on.
I guess the main thing that I've like learned from this, I can like summarize, is like you have to be cautious like before you speak. Think before you speak. So like, how are you gonna structure what you're gonna say? Like I know, like, and I don't want to like be rude, but like I know in like the case of your friend, you said that it like took 4 months to like recover from that one incident. So as far as like you should like choose like what consequences you want to have like before you say the words you want to say.
I want to thank you all for the conversation, and I want to leave you all with something as I was like hearing you all talk. Something that has helped me out in communication, especially when it's been really hard, is like putting on the lens of like for myself, content and process. So like when I'm talking to someone, there's the content of what we're talking about, like the subject, which is usually why people are like angry kind of, but like what's underneath that is the process, like our tone, our inflection, our body language, all that stuff that we were all talking about in here in the beginning. And if I'm aware of how I'm appearing and can shift between communicating to this person explicitly around content and then around process, like let's talk about why we're feeling the way that we're feeling right now. Like let's leave the subject matter of Republicans versus Democrats and let's talk about where our feelings are at right now. Like where are they coming from? Like will be an easy way for us to hear each other right now. And I think that in my experience, especially when I've been in really contentious topics, doing that almost throws people off because they are so confused that you're not trying to win and that you're trying to understand them, that it opens up that door, like it blows it wide open. So that's a piece of advice, something concrete that you could potentially do to find yourself in a better space.
Anyway, I want to be argumentative and like have like comments on something, even though it's completely unnecessary. really doing this conversation. This is mostly with my mom. So, say something I know it's completely unnecessary, it wasn't, best do it, but I know I shouldn't, but I don't work on not doing it as much, so I create foster a better conversation like that.
The thing I learned is you should know your crowds and what you're talking to, and like listen to what other people have to say before you speak.
I get to speak. I'm a shock. Okay. As the grown up in the room, one of the 4 grown ups in the room, or officially grown up people. Yes, Trent is a grown up. In the last couple of years, I have come to really embrace the idea that people don't know what they don't know. And that when you're talking to people, recognize that their perspective comes from their experience and that they don't know what you've experienced and they can't process the way you process because they haven't been through what you've been through. So give people grace.
So I was having a terrible time shutting up through this whole thing. And I thought about that, we are social beings. And so when you all talk about wanting to be right and wanting to win, so I thought being right equals winning equals power. And as social beings, power is very important to us. So, but when you want to have intimacy, you have to give up some power. Okay, so that's where, so then what happens to power? And that's what I heard you say, then how do I get, and I would like to put it into words, the power of self. Rather than the power over another, how do I get the power of self? So one of my favorite quotes in life comes from the Tao Te Ching. And it says, one's primary and only calling in life is to be a conduit for the supreme creative power of the universe. So if you think of each of us, given our different personalities, our different experiences, and we're kind of a unique prism, okay, through which the creative power of the universe shines. And therefore, because we're each different, we need the light that all of us give. So that helps me be curious to you. What light do you have? What power are you showing? And to honor myself, that I also am a conduit of this supreme power. And that's where I think we can get some power of self. Okay? Because we all have religious beliefs or theoretical beliefs of how we got here, where we came from. I think none of us can argue that there is a creative power. We're here. And if we think of each of us as having something unique to offer, that starts to get my power of self as opposed to power over another. Thank you.
So I guess the 2 pieces of advice that I would have for, I don't like to refer to you as younger than me because I'm not that old, but nonetheless, my first piece of advice would be, don't be afraid to put aside your own thoughts and walk into a conversation. When you walk into a conversation, don't assume what they're going to say is going to annoy me. Don't just clear your mind and walk in, which brings me to my second advice. Don't be afraid to walk away and step away from a conversation for a moment, just to clear your head. Because if you keep going when you're upset, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to argue your own points, and you're not going to listen. So take a step back, get a snack, maybe go for a run, clear your head, and then you come back to the conversation, and you'll find a lot more solutions than problems.
Facts. Wish you could see us all. We're all snapping right now as a sign of affirmation. But this is the end of our podcast, and I will say my corny closing. We will catch you on the flip-flop.